I'll introduce Jerry Thompson. Jerry is a regional race officer with U.S. Sailing, a judge with U.S. Sailing, sails a Force 5 currently, and has a big boat down on the coast. Jerry, what else do you race?
That's about it. Thank you. And hello, everybody, and welcome to Race and Rules Seminar for Sailors. This is a two-session seminar. This is session 1, and next week we'll have session 2. During the seminar, if you don't want to interrupt with a question, and I encourage you at any time, if you have a question, you can just unmute and say, hey, Jerry, what about this? If you'd rather type it into chat, Jolene will be monitoring the chat, and she may respond to you privately or share your question with all of us so that we can all learn. So unless you're asking a question, just kind of keep your microphone muted in case there's some background noise that you don't want to share with everybody. And let's get right on to it. Okay, the goals are, number 1, to understand the definitions. The definitions are in the front of the rule book. I sent out a PDF with the definitions highlighting the changes and the new definitions, and we'll discuss the changes in the new definitions tonight. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions on the others, we probably won't touch on them. During some of the rules, looking at some of the rules, we may bring up some of the definitions. Develop an understanding of the rules of Part 2. Those are near and dear to a racing sailor on the water. We're going to discuss some other rules which impact racing, 31, 43, which is a new one, 44, and race signals, some changes there. And again, we're going to emphasize rules that have changed and new rules. The good news is, for the racing sailor, there's not a whole lot of change between this quad and the next one, which begins January 1st. But we will look at all the changes and try to answer any questions you may have. This is the whole shebang right here, and this is what we're going to do tonight. Session 1, this is what we're going to try to cover. Basic principles, I mentioned the definitions, right-of-way rules, very important, general limitations, and a few other rules. Next week, we're going to concentrate on at marks and obstructions, Rule 18 and 19, which will take the majority of the time, probing the nuances of Rule 18, which is the longest and most complicated rule in the book, in my humble opinion. Okay, so you received a definition handout. You were asked to look it over. Does anybody have any questions on any of the definitions that were in the handbook?
And if you haven't read the definitions, and do read them between now and next week, and you have any questions that come up, based on what you've heard tonight, and as you read, we'll certainly re-entertain that next week as well.
Yeah, no sweat. So now I'm going to cover the change definitions and new definitions. And I'm going to start with the definition of finish. And you can see after starting, whenever in this presentation it's in red, that means there's a change that's new. But what's not shown is what's been removed. And what's been removed is crew and equipment in normal position. So bowsprits and other pieces of equipment attached to the hull are not part of the hull. So any part of the hull crosses the finish line, no longer crew and equipment. Hull is defined in the equipment rules of racing, and the bowsprit is not part of the hull, but is a spar. The tricky part is that effective January 1, this comes into effect. It removes crew and equipment in normal position. That's for finish and starting. The definition of starting will also have this, but the definition of overlap will still include equipment. So for example, you can overlap with somebody's transom hung rudder. That would be an overlap. You can overlap somebody with your spinnaker. But effective January 1st, when I'm taking finishes on the signal vessel, and it's a downwind finish, and your spinnaker breaks the plane, you'll no longer finish until your hull crosses the finishing line. And what they're trying to prepare us for is eventually there may be electronic devices in our bows that automatically record on course side before the start and when you finish. So things like that. So they're trying to fashion the rules now, massage the rules to allow for that. Also, and finish is corrects an error in sailing the course. Sailing the course is a new definition, and we're going to take and have a good look at that. Mark is basically the same. They just reworded it a little bit. It used to be if something was accidentally attached to the vessel, it would not be part, but they've just reworded it to say an object intentionally attached to the object or vessel is part of the mark. So example, a lot of times, especially with big boats, I know probably most of you are dinghy sailors like myself, but when I go to Charleston or Hampton or someplace where there's perf, always on the signal boat, we'll throw out a buoy with a line about 5 yards of line, maybe a little less. And that's to keep people from crashing the signal vessel, which is usually somebody's privately owned vessel, not belonging to the yacht club at all. And so that is intentionally attached to the object of vessel, but still the anchor line is not part of it. So shortly after starting, if port tack is favored and you tack right over on port and you touch that anchor road, you have not touched the mark. You have not touched the mark. However, if when you hit a road, a mark road or an anchor road, and you pull the mark into you, then you've touched the mark. Mark room, a little bit of tweaks with mark room, and we're going to cover mark room very heavily next week. To pass or pass has been added and sail the course. And there's a thing called a passing mark, which you don't round and you just are required to leave it to port or starboard, and they accounted for that in this update to the rules. And sail the course without sail the course, of course, is a new definition we're going to get to. Obstruction. One or two little changes here. An object or line. So the race committee may now designate an object that is otherwise too small to be an obstruction, and also a line. For example, sometimes when we have a race course with it's called a modified course, start finish line in the middle, leeward mark is behind, windward mark is above, ahead. Some race committees will close that line in the sailing instructions. Now you have the ability just to say, it's an obstruction and safely passed only on one side. But I don't like to do that myself when I'm running, and not many race managers really like to close that line on a modified course, because it does take away, it makes the amount of space available to sail is restricted, and it hurts you in your tactics. But I've got a few questions to ask, and I'm going to start with, and anybody please chime on, and don't worry about it if you don't get it right, but I think most of you will get this right. Is a mark an obstruction? Is a mark an obstruction? I'll take the first one. It depends. A 3-foot cylinder wouldn't qualify to be an obstruction because we could pass it without changing course substantially. But an island that is acting as a mark would be an obstruction. Could be both, an obstruction and a mark. Next one. Is the signal vessel an obstruction? on the start line? Anybody? Yes, it can be.
Yes.
Yes, very good. Phew, somebody saved me. It can be.
That was John.
Was there a question?
No, I was just saying that was John.
Okay. Oh, John Chaplinsky?
No, John Russell.
Oh, John Russell. Okay. Hey, John Russell. Is a signal vessel a mark? I just asked if the signal vessel was an obstruction. I got yes. Is a signal vessel a mark?
No.
Yes, it can be both.
Oh,
It can be both, yeah.
It can be both. Is the signal vessel's anchor road part of the obstruction? And the answer to that is yes. That's a little tricky. But is the signal vessel's anchor road part of the mark? And the answer to that is no. One final one. Is a vessel displaying signal flag M a mark on obstruction? So for example, Phil is up at the Windward Mark. He's my Windward Mark boat, and the Windward Mark goes flat. Phil raises signal flag M and gives repeated sounds. He anchors his boat. Is that boat an obstruction or a mark or both? It could be both. It depends on the size of the boat, but it could be both. So, all right, one more question, and this has to do with, we'll see who's really understands the definitions. When is a boat racing?
After the
Warning flag.
after the warning signal.
Hold on. Okay, when is a boat racing?
after the gun goes at
Red
the
flag.
factory.
After
After
the
the-
warning, until when?
All boats are finished.
Until,
Finished and cleared the line.
okay, very good. So let's just take one boat, not all boats. One boat is racing from, oh, what did somebody say the warning signal?
Somebody did. John, I think John did.
What, that's not correct. Can anybody give me the correct answer?
I thought it was when the gun went off for the race.
Preparatory flag.
The prep signal.
Preparatory,
The prep,
preparatory flag.
yeah, right. So very good. So you are racing when the prep goes up. 1 minute into the sequence, you are racing. And if you break a rule, you should take a penalty while you are racing. So anyway, very good. Proper course. We got sail the course in here as well. We're going to talk a little more about proper course when we get to Rule 17. And not much of a change, just really making for the new definition. We're going to skip over that one. Here's a new one, sail the course. And this one is really nothing more than the old Rule 28. Remember the string rule? So now sail a course, a boat sails a course provided that a string representing her track from the time she begins to approach the starting line from its pre-start side to start until she finishes when drawn taut does each of these things. And this is basically what Rule 28 said in this quad, basically the same thing. So let's just take a look at the string rule for just a moment because, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this. All right. So we've got a boat here out on a race course, and we're going to demonstrate, hopefully, the string rule. So boom, she starts. She comes way over here, and she's going to tack. So I'm going to put a little holder there to hold my string. And she's going to come over here and do like I do, overstand the mark quite a bit. And then she's going to come around and go to the offset. Then she's going to come back down to go to the leeward mark. Around one more time. Let me undo my string so we can finish. And then, okay. Take these away. So is all that really says is that when the line is drawn taut, it passes all the required marks on the required side. Now you notice the first time we went by the leeward mark, we didn't leave it to port because at that time it wasn't a mark on the course to us. And so that's all the string rule does. When you tighten that thing, it goes like that. Just one other quick thing. If, say, you're going around the windward mark and you blow the offset off, you forget about it, and your crew hits you on the back of the head and says, hey, we missed the offset. You go, oh, crap. And you come around like this, and you go around the offset. And then you come on to finish, let's say. Is that going to help you?
I don't think so.
Nope.
Because we were supposed to leave it to starboard. I mean, to port. To port like that. So that's just a string rule. And we'll talk about that maybe a little more as we go on. Okay, this definition of start is now just her hull. It used to be, this year it's crew and equipment in normal position. So now when you start, it's just based on your hull, just based on the hull. And remember, I don't think any of our dinghies have bowsprits, but if it did, bowsprit is not part of the hull. It's actually a spar. Okay, I think that's all good. Okay, one thing that's not in the definitions is a term called barging. And, you know, we hear sailors talk about it, so I thought we'd just take a minute to cover that. There is no definition, as barging is a sailor's term for this scenario we're looking at now. Blue, green, and red are approaching the starting line to start. They're on their final approach. Therefore, the rules of Part C are off. We're going to learn about that next weekend when there's no mark room and there's no room at obstruction. Those are Part C rules. Rule that applies is Rule 11 on the same tack overlapped. At position 3.5, the warning signal comes down and the race has started. Red and green must keep clear of blue, which they've done. So this is a setup for what we call barging, but it's no more than windward leeward, and we're going to learn about that tonight. We're going to look at many scenarios of windward leeward. But let me ask, what if green had been insistent? What if green had stuck their nose in there, and what would you do? If green was in here and bound to determine, if you were turquoise, what would you do?
I believe you would give room and then protest.
Absolutely the right answer to that question. You would not drive them unmercifully into the signal vessel. You would give them room, and then you would protest. Very good. Great answer. Okay. Let's get into it now. We're starting with the basic principles. And I just want to review this with you. Competitors in the sport of sailing are governed by a body of rules that they are expected to follow and enforce. And I've got that circled in yellow. I think all of us know we're supposed to follow the rules, but I hope all of us know that the competitors, not the race committee, not the organizing authority, the competitors are expected to follow and enforce. Another important bit here is that, and in red, it's new this year, when a boat breaks a rule and is not exonerated, she will promptly take an appropriate penalty. Does that say you have to be protested?
Nope.
No. If you break a rule and you know you broke a rule, then you take the appropriate penalty if you're not exonerated, or you risk, you know, you could risk being protested. For example, this weekend, I don't know if any CSC sailors are out there, but we had a wonderful frostbiting at Jordan Lake this weekend. And on the second race, I believe, I tacked over to port shortly after starting, and I couldn't clear a laser. And he had to sail down. He had to come down to avoid. And what he said is, I'm changing course. And I said, okay. And I did my penalty turn. And I did, you know, so the word protest doesn't have to be involved. Another thing that happened to me some years ago that I remember to this day, it was at Car Lake, and I was racing my Buccaneer, and right close to the start, we're on the start line, and Kelly came in, lured to me, and had me hooked. And if I went up, I was going to go over, and she was bringing me up. She says, Jerry, you got to come up. And I didn't go up, and we ended up bumping, and I broke a rule. And she didn't say protest, so I didn't take a penalty. But to this day, I feel guilty about that. And to this day, Kelly will sometimes remind me of that when we're talking about rules. So don't be like me. Break a rule, take the penalty, and exonerate yourself by taking the penalty so that you'll feel much better.
Hey, Jerry.
Yes.
Jerry, if the boat that was fouled, does he have more clout if he does, in fact, say protest?
Well, what do you mean by more clout? I mean,
well, if he doesn't say protest, can he go to the protest committee afterwards, even if he doesn't say protest, or does he have more flex in his muscle if he in fact says protest? Would that be a better argument going into the committee afterwards if it were a big race?
Well, that's a good question. You can protest somebody. You can fill out the form and go to a hearing without saying protest on the water. However, one of the first steps the chairman of the jury is going to do is going to determine if the protest is valid. And in order for it to be a valid protest, the protestor must say the magic word protest on the water. If that word is not spoken, the jury will find that it's not a valid protest and close the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
So if you want to protest somebody, say the word, always. And don't do, another bad habit is if you break a rule and it's between you and your buddy and you look over and say, hey, I owe you one. But there's more than you and your buddy out there racing. There's a whole bunch of other boats out there in that race. So, you know, if you break a rule, take a penalty and move on. Okay. Good question. We're going to move on to the right-of-way section now, section A. And a boat has a right-of-way over another boat when the other boat is required to keep clear of her. I think everybody's got a pretty good grasp of these, but we're going to cover them. There's a specific order which you have to observe them. However, some rules in section B, C, and D limit the actions of a right-of-way boat. So what this is telling us, just because you get the right-of-way doesn't mean you can do whatever you like. There are some limitations to your right-of-way, and we're going to discuss those tonight. Section A contains 4 rules, 10, 11, 12, and 13. What's very important to know is that one of these 4 rules of section A is on at all times. One of them is on at all times. Not more than one of these at a time is on at all times. And another good thing to know is that rules apply between 2 boats at a time. You and another boat, not you and the rest of the fleet, you and the boat next to you. Now the boat next to you may have something going on at the same moment with a boat next to them, but it applies between 2 boats. They apply between 2 boats at a time. So let's have a look. I think everybody's got this one on opposite tacks, and in sailor speak, we call this port starboard. And when boats are on opposite tacks, a port tack boat shall keep clear of a starboard tack boat. I think everybody has this down. But there's a good tip I want to share with you tonight that I use on the water that helps me to make decisions a lot faster. Whenever a boat is in my close proximity, I determine which tack they are on. hopefully I know which tack I'm on at all times, but sometimes I got to double check that too. But I just practice, recognizing the tacks that the boats are on around you. And when it comes time to make a decision, you'll be able to make it that much quicker because you'll have a good grasp on, what tack your rival's on. So very easy here. We got port, red on port, green on starboard. Green is a right away, port is a keep clear. Very, very easy. And it doesn't matter if one boat's going upwind or one downwind. We got starboard going upwind and we got port coming downwind. Right away is green, keep clear is red on port. We got both boats coming downwind at this time. We got port and starboard. Port must keep clear of starboard. And again, one going up and one coming down, just order reversed a little, port starboard, same deal. Both boats coming down closer to each other. Clearly one boat's on port, the other on starboard. Port must keep clear of starboard. And this is one that causes people a little thought sometimes, because there's another rule, clear astern and clear ahead, but it doesn't apply before opposite tacks. So the first, well, actually not the very first rule. We're going to talk about which is the first one when we get to it. But the second one you apply is on opposite tacks. So these boats are clearly on opposite tacks. Port must keep clear of starboard. Is there any questions there? All right. Very good. Let's watch a little movie. This has to do with opposite tacks. Your viewpoint is from the starting vessel. Not the fleet I race in, by the way. All right, so the starboard tackers are off, and looks like we got a port tacker coming down the line. You see the pin end? Uh-oh. Boom. So, did you see what happened there? Let's see if I can stop it where I want to. A little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, just a little bit further. There's one person. I want to see all three. Okay. All right. So there are three people here on this boat. Do you think they were aware of this port tack boat?
The three up high, probably not.
Probably not. We don't know for sure, but this is definitely a port starboard case. This boat's on port, this boat's on starboard. However, there's a case that applies to this situation, and what a case is, it's when decisions are appealed to world sailing, and it describes a situation that they've not made a case for before, they'll make it a case. And this is case 107. And what it says is, during the starting sequence, which we have here, a boat that is not keeping a lookout, you don't see a window here, there's three people. A boat that is not keeping a lookout may thereby fail to do everything reasonably possible to avoid contact. Hailing is one way that a boat may act to avoid contact. So we're all used to, yelling starboard, right? Letting the other port tacker know, especially up around the windward mark. That happens a lot, or even out on the course. But so I don't know how this ended up, but I just wanted to make you aware that you have to be keeping a proper lookout, or you may not be doing, it may be found that you didn't do everything you could have to avoid contact.
Hey, Jerry, does that apply just on the start or in the open water?
I bring this, there's not a case on the open water, but I bring it out to the open water as well. Eric, do you have a comment there?
There is another case. I'm not sure the number. I think it might be case 15, where they talk about keeping a lookout at a leeward mark.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is the rules don't, Rule 14, which is the avoiding contact rule, is the same whether it's at the start or on the course. So my personal opinion is you need to keep a lookout at all times.
And I agree with Eric. I think you have to keep a lookout at all times. And if you hail, that's one way of acting to avoiding contact. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
it does.
Wendell, your question is actually really good because there are some officials out there that because case 107 is only at the start, they actually are deciding that it really only applies at the start as well. So basically, the judges who are on this call actually feel that it should apply across the entire course, but there are others who think differently.
I personally learned this the hard way back when. Is we were port boat, and the guy had gotten away or something, and all the crew, we had our heads inside the boat. We were port clearly, and it was I felt it was my responsibility, but the starboard boat didn't see us either. It was a windy day and things were just going crazy. They didn't see us. They didn't hail us. Nobody knew anything, and we had 5 people on each boat. Nobody knew anything was about to happen until it happened.
And what was the outcome?
Well, I paid for his damage.
Okay.
Clearly, I mean, I felt that we were wrong. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he had the responsibility. Now, this was 20 years ago. I didn't know that he had a responsibility, and maybe back then he didn't. And,
Yeah.
But I felt entirely responsible and paid for his boat.
Okay. All right. Okay, rule 11, on the same tack, overlapped. Sailor speak, windward leeward. That's what sailors call this rule. When boats are on the same tack and overlapped, a windward boat shall keep clear of a leeward boat. So these boats are on the same tack. So remember how important it is to be able to glance real quick and recognize what tack you are. And windward shall keep clear of leeward. Again, we're on the same tack, and windward shall keep clear of leeward. Doesn't matter if you're on a beat to windward or on a broad reach downwind. On the same tack and overlapped. So the boats are on the same tack, port tack, right? And neither boat is clear ahead. Therefore, the boats are overlapped. The boats are overlapped. Leeward, yellow, is right away by rule 11. And sometimes people confuse this one. So I'm always very careful when I'm headed upwind. I really keep my eyes peeled when I'm in amongst a bunch of downwind boats, because some folks don't realize that they give way. Keep clear. All right, on the same tack, not overlap. So we just talked about same tack overlapped. Now, if we're not overlapped, and the sailor speak for this is overtaking boat, keep clear. When boats are on the same tack and are not overlapped, a boat clear astern shall keep clear of a boat clear ahead. So clear astern keeps clear of clear ahead. Doesn't matter whether you're on starboard or port tack. A clear astern must keep clear of clear ahead. Same tack, clear astern must keep clear of clear ahead. All the way around. Okay. And the last rule of section A, there was 4 of them, and this is really the one you consider first, because this one trumps them all. While tacking, and after a boat passes head to wind, she shall keep clear of other boats until she's on a close haul course. During that time, rules 10, 11, 12 do not apply. So whenever you're tacking, whenever a boat is out there tacking, 10, 11, 12 do not apply between that boat and a nearby boat. If two boats are subject to this rule at the same time, the one on the other's port side, okay, let's say two boats are tacking right here at the same time, the boat on port has to keep clear of the boat on starboard. But let me ask a question here. Let's see how you've been following the starboard business. At position 2, what tack is turquoise on?
Port.
Port tack. Okay, at position 3?
I
Port.
would port again.
Port again. Very good. So until you pass head to wind, you are still on the tack that you approached on. Just head to wind. If you go up just head to wind, you're still on port tack. I bring this out because if you're a port tacker on the start line and you're looking for a hole to get in, it's real important for you to, get in your hole and complete your tack with a few seconds to spare so that you can get on starboard tack. Don't get stuck head to wind. If you go up and you just stay head to wind and, somebody is paying attention out there, they'll know that you're on port tack and maybe try to take advantage of that. Okay. So while tacking, that's what this rule is about. While tacking is from when you pass head to wind right here until you come to a close hauled course. A close hauled course. So let's say that at position 4, the crew is slack and hasn't sheeted in the jib and it's flapping around. Does that matter?
Nope.
What if the main is flapping around?
Nope.
Doesn't matter, right? Because the test is close hauled course. All right. So, sometimes it happens when we're tacking, the sheets slip through our hands or whatever. Once we're on that close hauled course, we're done tacking. Okay. All right. Any questions on section A?
No, thanks.
All right. Let's take a look at another example of while tacking. This is the very famous Sydney Hobart race. And I believe this was last year. And we've got Wild Oats and Comanche in Sydney Harbor. And this is Comanche and this is Wild Oats. And I'll let you observe and we'll discuss what happened after the end here. This is Wild Oats now. Wild Oats is tacking. And the skipper of Comanche is going to invite the skipper of Wild Oats over for tea. Okay. So can somebody describe what happened there?
I don't believe Wild Oats completed the tack and caused Comanche to change course. I think Wild Oats is responsible. Or did not get that.
Anybody else have an opinion beside Wendell? Wendell is absolutely correct. That's what the jury decided. And what happened is Comanche protested. They sailed on down to Hobart. Wild Oats beat Comanche to the finish by about an hour. But Wild Oats did not take a penalty turn here in Sydney Harbor. She did not exonerate herself from breaking that rule. Comanche protested. The jury found that indeed Wild Oats, like Wendell said, broke Rule 13 while tacking. And the sailing instructions or the notice to race 1 allows the jury to come up with, it wasn't a strict disqualification. they could come up with something else. And what the jury came up with, they tacked Wild Oats long enough in terms of time so that Comanche beat her to the finish by about 15 minutes. So Comanche ended up winning that race just because Wild Oats refused to exonerate herself after breaking a rule.
So Jerry, why do you think Wild Oats thought they didn't break the rule? Why do you think they didn't take a penalty during that situation?
I have no idea. And they had on board a tactician who was supposed to advise on such things, but I guess the advice wasn't good. I don't know the answer to that.
It looked like, to me, Comanche dipped down heading to the stern of that boat. So when it tacked around, it didn't have the clearance. I think if Comanche would have held its course, it might have made a fair tack.
Oh, you think so, huh? Let's go.
I don't know. I'm just saying it looked like they dipped down right before they got there.
Let's look at it one more time. Okay, we're aboard Wild Oats. And that's you, Phil, right? I can recognize your voice.
No, that was
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stephen Pruitt.
Oh, Stephen Pruitt. Okay.
No, that was me.
Okay.
Okay, watch now. She's turning up already. And remember, it's a close haul course.
But before that, she turned down, it looked like.
I don't know. Well,
Anyway,
I can tell you what the jury decided.
I know. I'm not saying that they were wrong. I'm just saying it looks like Comanche dipped down initially, and then when they tacked, then came back up.
And maybe that was her reasoning for not taking a penalty turn.
Right.
Maybe they thought.
That's the answer I was trying to give Jolene. That's what I think maybe they said.
Yeah, maybe they thought they were going to win in a hearing, but what a risk they took, because
Right.
Sydney Harbor's right at the beginning of the race. They could have. I know these big boats take a little to take penalty turns, but they could have done it. But anyways, the final slide of this section A is one I've come up with that helps you work through what's going on. I was an IT guy, so I love flow charts. Everything, even around my house here, I have flow charts for. Ask my dear Roberta, and she'll tell you. But anyway, the first question you ask is one boat tacking. And that's because if one boat is tacking, all these other rules are off. So here we see that red is tacking. If one boat is tacking, Rule 13 applies at that time between the two boats. If one boat is not tacking, then you begin with opposite tacks. Are the boats on opposite tacks? Yes, Rule 10 applies, as we see here. If not, no. Are the boats overlapped? They're overlapped here. You can see the overlap line. Are they overlapped? Then Rule 11 applies on the same tack overlapped. If they're not overlapped, we finally get down to the last one. It must be Rule 12 on the same tack, not overlapped. So if you can, this is not too hard to memorize. If you can memorize this and you can work through it very quickly, that'll help you on the course, trying to figure out what's going on. And also, if there's an inexperienced skipper out there and I've been there, I had no idea sometimes whether I was breaking the rule, and I was. It's nice to let people know gently, say, hey, you just broke Rule 12 because I'm this and you're that, and help them out a little bit and encourage them to take a penalty turn. And if they're experienced like me, protest me. Don't even give me the option. Okay. Section B, general limitations. And the first one we're going to look at is Rule 14. And I want to emphasize, before we get to the changes, reasonably possible. So you have to avoid contact if reasonably possible. What does that tell us? What does that indicate?
Could be a lot of interpretation.
Well, it indicates it's possible for you to break this rule. Well, let me say, not break this. contact the boat without breaking this rule. It is possible for you to contact a boat without breaking this rule. If it was not reasonably possible, and of course, you must have been the right-of-way boat as well. A boat shall avoid contact with another boat if reasonably possible. However, a right-of-way boat or one sailing within, this is new, the room or mock room to which she is entitled, and that, I think that's just a little bit of rewording, not really that much change, need not act to avoid contact until she is clear that the other boat is not keeping clear or given mock room. What has changed significantly in Rule 14, it used to have a little exoneration bit to it. In other words, it said if you were the right-of-way boat and you made contact with another boat because they weren't supposed to be there, or you were sailing within the room or mock room to which you were entitled, you could be exonerated if there was no damage or injury. Well, that's been moved to the new Rule 43, and we're going to cover that tonight. So exoneration was in 3 spots in the old rule book. Now it's just in 1 spot in the new rule book. That's the new Rule 43, and we'll look at that. Avoiding contact, what this slide is showing that, port is wrong, starboard is right, and just because port's the boat that sustains the damage doesn't help. You're still wrong, even though this boat is not hurt a bit. You've hurt your boat. You're still wrong. You've broken Rule 14. And, if you cause serious damage, you should retire. But with damage that's not serious, you can exonerate yourself by taking penalty turns. Let's look at this example of avoiding contact. Who's on port and who's on starboard?
Green is port. Green
Okay.
is starboard.
Green is port, red is starboard. So
No,
No, it's the other way around. Green
yeah,
is
green
starboard.
is starboard and red is port, right? And so red is keep clear of green. And as we're moving along here, red knows, the skipper's sitting right here, that green is there, and she just keeps her course. Starboard keeps her course, and they meet right there. Who broke a rule?
Both of them.
Okay, I agree. Both boats broke a rule. Red broke rules 10 and 14, port starboard and avoiding contact. Green broke 14, but since there's no damage, she is exonerated by Rule 43.1c. A right-of-way boat or one sailing within the room or mock room to which she is entitled is exonerated for breaking Rule 14 if the contact does not cause damage or injury. And this was just, they're both going about the same speed. So red loses this one. Any questions? Good.
If they take penalties, are they okay? So the red should just take a penalty because they were responsible there.
That's correct. That's correctly. And one thing to do, when you go to a regatta is make sure you read the sailing instructions, or next year it may be in the notice of race, and we're not going to get into that in this session, but make sure you read both the notice of race and the sailing instructions, because a lot of times you'll find that you'll only have to take a one-turn penalty as opposed to a 2-turn penalty. It may be that a U.S. sailing prescription is in force, and unless you're in the zone, if you break a rule, you only have to take a 1-turn penalty. So read the NOR and read the sailing instructions. I have seen people on numerous occasions take 2 turns when only 1 turn was required. And that's just, taking an extra turn. And try to stay away from the terminology 360 and 720. Does anybody still call them that? 360 and 720?
I do.
Yeah, call them one turn and two turn, because you don't have to do a complete 360 or a complete 720. You can get away with less than that. What you have to do is a tack and a jibe. All right, very good, everybody. Thanks for the questions. All right, now we're going to look at limitations of the right-of-way boat, and this can be explained. If the other boat must keep clear of you by rule, if you're the right-of-way, you know, they have to keep clear. However, even if you're the right-of-way boat, there are limitations that sometimes apply. These limitations are contained in these three rules, 15, 16, and 17. I find that most new sailors learning the rules really don't apply these because they're so focused on, you know, port starboard, windward leeward, clear head, clear stern, that they forget about these. But these are important. These are important limitations, and we'll have a look at them. Rule 15 is when you acquire the right-of-way. When you acquire the right-of-way, you shall initially give the other boat room to keep clear unless she acquires the right-of-way because of the other boat's actions. So let's see what happens here. We're both on port tack, and then green jibes, and in one motion, bam, hits red's boom. Did she give red room to keep clear?
No.
No, she did not. So green would break rule 15 in this scenario. Green would be found to have broken rule 15. Let's look at a couple more examples. So both of these boats are on port tack, coming downwind at position or sometime between 2 and 3. Blue jibes onto starboard. And you notice she holds her course a bit. She doesn't come right up. And tactically, it may make sense for her to keep going straight. She may be setting up tactically for something else. But the point is here, if 3 had came up hard as she acquired the right-of-way or immediately right after, she would be wrong. You have to give yellow time to respond to your new right-of-way. And blue does this in this scenario, so they're both okay. Now at position 4, blue doesn't have to say anything. She can just start coming up, and yellow has to respond. If it's, you know, tactically it may not make any sense, so you keep going straight. It all depends on the tactical situation. All right, so let me walk you through this scenario. Remember, we're still on rule 15, acquiring the right-of-way. And at position 1, yellow is the right-of-way. What rule? Who's that?
Boats on the same tack, windward leeward.
What rule?
10.
11.
11.
Rule 11, pretty close. You get the sailor speak right for the rule, windward leeward, that's okay. At position 2, who's right away?
Yellow.
Well, what are they doing?
I'm totally wrong. Forget I said that.
They're tacking.
Okay,
So they have to
okay,
keep
well,
it.
it's all right. So when they're attacking, what must they do?
Keep clear.
That's absolutely right. They're the keep clear boat. But at position 3, they're right away again, right? But she doesn't really give blue room to keep clear. And, you know, we can interpret this different ways, but all I'm trying to show is that, you know, blue came up head to wind to avoid getting hit there. And I think she did all she could do. And if yellow hits there, she broke rule 15. She acquired the right of way without giving blue room to keep clear. So what these limitations do, they limit what the right of way boat can do. And, Yellow could have easily avoided by, coming down a little more and avoiding that. Even if blue went head to win, she had done everything possible. Let's take a look at this one. Same scenario. Okay, who's right of way here?
Green boat,
Blue.
blue boat,
Okay, the blue boat, what rule?
windward lured.
Windward lured.
Well,
Very good. Same tack overlapped, right?
Rule 11.
could it not also be clear ahead?
No. I think if you look real well,
That's where the rudder is.
I didn't mean for it to be, okay, let's put a little rudder on there. How's that? I didn't mean for it to be. I meant for them to be overlapped. You have to kind of look at the angle of the transom.
Okay.
And so that's why it's tricky sometimes. But let's just say that they're overlapped. And blue is the right-of-way boat here. But what does blue do?
Change course.
Changes course to port. Who is right-of-way here?
Yellow.
Yellow. But how did she gain the right-of-way?
By blue boat tacking.
Absolutely. Very good. As a result of blue tacking onto port, yellow all of a sudden is right away. And guess what? Remember what the rule says?
She wasn't-
Unless she acquires the right of way because of the other boat's actions. And that's exactly what's happened there. She got the right of way because of blue. Blue's in a bad spot.
Mhm.
Blue is in a very bad spot here. At the very least, yellow will have to, make an unseaman-like move to avoid, and then protest blue, and blue will be wrong all day long. So that's the nuance of that Rule 15. All right, now changing course. This is another one that sometimes we don't pay attention to all the time, or we don't not pay attention to, we don't understand that it's in play. So let's have a look at Rule 16. The first part's pretty easy. When a right-of-way boat changes course, your right-of-way, when you change course, you shall give the other boat room to keep clear. And we're going to try to nail down exactly what that means. Then there's a second part to 16 on changing course. And in addition, on a beat to windward, when a port tack boat is keeping clear by sailing to pass to leeward of a starboard tack boat, the starboard tack boat shall not bear away if, as a result, the port tack boat must change course immediately. All right. Very hard to visualize what 16.2 means here, but we're going to look at a scenario that I hope will clear it up for you. But let's look at 16.1 first. And I have found myself in this position a couple of times. I'm thinking, yeah, I am definitely going to pass ahead of green. I'm keep clear, but I'm good to go. And then a wind shift comes. And sometimes that happens. All of a sudden, I'm getting headed. I maintain my course, but the right-of-way boat changes course. Can she do that? Well, she can if she gives me room to keep clear. But is she giving me room to keep clear here? No, there's no room. So if green contacts red and the facts found in a hearing reflect this here, wind shift, red maintained a course, green changed a course, should be right-of-way boat found breaking Rule 16.1. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so blue is changing course and yellow must give yellow room to keep clear. So blue is, she's coming up pretty easily there, really. She's coming up. And blue does not give yellow room to keep clear at position 5. So yellow is thought to have done everything she could here to keep clear, and blue keeps coming and makes contact. And it could be found, I'm not saying definitely, could be some other things involved here, but blue would be hard pressed in a hearing if this scenario was found as a fact by the jury.
So Jerry,
Yes.
what if, say, yellow is a boat that cannot point as well as blue, and blue keeps heading it up? Blue can sail that, but yellow can't. But they're doing all they can, and they can't go any higher.
Well,
How would that play out?
I mean, blue is so close here that yellow can't go beyond head to wind, or else she'll make contact with her transom. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So that's why blue is kind of wrong here. You know, she's changing course. She can be found to break 16-1 because she didn't give yellow room to keep clear. Yellow has done everything she could. And if she goes any further, her transom's going to, whoop, I'm sorry, her transom's going to stick out. And so we say that she's done all she could. And so blue would be found breaking 16-1.
Jerry, even at position 3, had yellow tried to tack away, there would have been contact.
Yeah, if that transom would have swung over. And that's one thing we always look at, you know, when we're considering room to keep clear. And yellow did all she could. She's come up head to wind, and blue still made contact. So blue would be hard pressed to win this one in a hearing.
And blue went above close hold, actually, for a moment.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at another scenario. This is 16.2. Remember that big wordy thing? And this is referred to as the no hunting rule. So if red on port is making room, giving room, you're not allowed to come down and drive her down even further. And I don't think in our racing experience we see too much of this going on. But this is allowed in match racing. Match racing 16.2 is off, and they are allowed to do this as a tactic. Fleet racing, no. Fleet racing, if they're clearly showing you that they're coming down to avoid, you cannot drive them down further. And that's all 16.2 is about. And to be honest, in our level of racing, this doesn't have a whole lot of impact to us. I think I'm just happy going, you know, going up the course as quickly as I can. All right. The final limitation on the right-of-way boats on the same tack, proper course. Boy, and proper course invokes all kinds of ideas and thoughts, and we're going to try to track it all down tonight. And I'm going to read this, and don't worry, I'm going to show you examples. If a boat clear astern becomes overlapped within 2 of her hull lengths to leeward of a boat on the same tack, she shall not sail above her proper course while they remain on the same tack and overlapped within that distance. A lot going on here. Unless in doing so, she promptly sails astern of the other boat. This rule does not apply if the overlap begins while the windward boat is required by Rule 13 to keep clear. Let's look at an example, and it'll come clear. I just want to emphasize it's the proper course of the leeward boat, that governs. So let's take a look. Okay, we got a couple of boats on a reach. The mark is up here, so that's their proper course. And so blue here obtains an overlap within 2 boat lengths of yellow. And that means she shall not sail above her proper course while they remain on the same tack and overlapped within that distance. So what's that saying is blue cannot do this, cannot take her up. Now, tactically, if the direction of the next mark is that way, I don't know why she would. You know, we're fleet racing. We're not team racing or match racing. So we're just trying to get around the course as quickly as we can. Some people, when they're in a position to take somebody up, just can't resist it. Whether it makes sense tactically or not, they like to take people up. And I don't know. But anyways, all that is saying right now is that within 2 boat lengths, you establish that overlap from clear astern. You cannot sail above your proper course. Now, if you're in a Perth fleet or a Portsmouth fleet, and these are different boats, they can very easily have different proper courses. 2 boats of different classes can each have a different proper course. But in this rule, the leeward boat governs her proper course, cannot sail above her proper course. And if the mark is this way, I would say that her proper course is pretty much that way. She
Hey,
can't-
Jerry,
Yes.
what if you got current coming in from the right?
Okay. If you have current coming in from above, that may impact your proper course. Who's that, Jim?
Yeah, and I had this happen up in Rock Hall, and I was trying to make the mark, and the yellow boat would not give enough leeway for the current,
No.
and I just had to keep saying, "There's
You-
current, there's current. I got to go right."
Yeah, you were right. That was your proper course. That was your proper course. So in a current, that's a great example, Jim, that your proper course wasn't straight to the mark because the current, like a magic carpet, was bringing you down. You had to sail up, and you should have protested that. How'd that work out?
Oh, he kept giving me enough room,
Okay.
very reluctantly.
Well, I understand that. But you are absolutely right. Current does come into play, the proper course. There's a lot of things that come into play to proper course. There's not a cut and dried definition for any boat of her proper course. So conditions, sea state, current, all of that comes into effect. And Jim, if that boat didn't give you room and you had to go below the course and you protested them, you would have won your protest, I expect. From my point of view, if I was sitting on the jury, I would have said, yeah, that boat broke a rule there. So.
And to Jerry's point, different conditions create different proper course. Even 2 boats, the same design, the skippers may have different opinions about what proper course is. If a skipper thinks that there's better wind in a particular direction and wants to head over there, then that's where his proper course is going to come into play.
Okay, great. Thanks, Julie. Okay, so in this example, we got a little different thing happening. The windward boat is obtaining an overlap from clear astern. What can blue do? Blue can take her up.
Whatever they want.
Blue can protect her. We call it what? Protecting our wind, right? You can stop her from rolling over you because the overlap was to windward. Remember, the rule says to leeward, to leeward. So if a boat comes above you, let me get to the right one. If a boat is rolling you from above, if it tactically makes sense for you to come up, you can come up. You can do that. All right. Down below here, we've got the same situation. Yellow is clear astern, obtains an overlap to windward. Blue says, no way, Jose, you're not going to roll over me. But right here at position 4, yellow has a quick luff. She breaks the overlap. She breaks the overlap. She comes back down. A new overlap is created within 2 boat lengths, and blue must not sail above her proper course. So that's one way to defend against.
So somebody had said in the top scenario that blue could do whatever they wanted. The only call out I would there is they can't necessarily hit yellow.
Right. Changing course, rule 16.1 still is in play, is always in play when you're the right-of-way boat. So you have to give yellow room to keep clear, which blue does here. But Jolene's right. You know, if blue came up hard and, you know, created contact, you're not going to win. You're changing course. You got to give, if you're right away, and I think this is one of the most misunderstood rules, because with young sailors, especially new to racing, somebody has taught them if they have the right of way, you know, they have the right of way, but without the limitations. So that's good. Thank you, Jolene, for pointing that out.
And then the bottom scenario, that is called a tactical luff.
A tactical luff. It's beautiful. I've never done this, but I'd like to one day. Okay. All right. So let me read this scenario for you. We've got a couple of things going on here. The warning flag is dropped at position 2.5. So right around here, the warning flag is dropped. So that means the race has started, right? And green obtained an overlap within 2 boat lengths of blue. So you can see green is clear astern and she gains an overlap there. Therefore, she may not sail above her proper course following position 2.5. Why do I say that? Why do I say that she cannot sail above her proper course from when they start?
She didn't establish the overlap outside of two whole legs.
Well, that's not what I'm looking for. What I was looking for is there is no proper course for any boat before the start. Keep that in mind. That's another one of those proper course things. There is no proper course for any boat before this. So right here and right here, there's no proper course. Once that warning signal falls right here and the race starts, green has a proper course. And what she does, she comes up and shoots the mark, and then she falls off, and blue protests because of this luff right here. What's your opinions on that? Is that okay? Did green break a rule?
Yes, because she changed course and she sailed above her proper course within 2 boat lengths of the other boat.
Is that not her proper course? Her proper course is to sail around the course as quickly as possible without considering this nearby boat. So take blue away. Is that her proper course? The answer is yes. That is her proper course. So you put blue back in there. You're correct. She changed course, but I think while she changed course, she gave blue room to keep clear. And then once she was beyond the pin, she again came to her new proper course. Her proper course right here was, you know, come on down to close halt, which she did do. So if blue protested in this scenario, blue would probably lose because that was actually green's proper course. Any comments on that? Does everybody get to see that pretty good? This is one that comes up sometimes at the start. A lot of times we focus on barging down here, But, you know, proper course, boom, it counts. And we can also have barging on this end, but it's set up a little differently. I think maybe I might have a scenario for that. I'm not absolutely sure. So, all right. This does not complete session 1. Hold on. We're going to do a little more tonight. We're going to start talking about Rule 31. And nothing has changed here. Touching the mark. I think everybody's got this down pretty good. You can't touch a mark while racing. You shall not. Everybody knows racing is from the prep up until you have finished and cleared the line. You're racing. A boat shall not touch a starting mark before starting the mark begins. I've probably told you this story before, so be patient with me if you've heard it before. But years ago, I was chair of a hearing, and I was being evaluated by an international judge down at Camp Seagull. And my hearing was one optimist sailor protested another optimist sailor for touching the mark. So, you know, I introduced everybody, get everything going. It was a valid protest. I'm moving along real good. And of course, I'm nervous because I'm being watched. The sailors are nervous because this is probably the first hearing that I've ever been in. And the protester said, well, I saw so-and-so touch the windward mark and she didn't take a penalty turn. Okay. All right. Anything else to say? No. Okay. What do you say? And the protestee says, well, I know I didn't hit the mark because I pushed it out of the way. It was everything I could do to keep from laughing, which would have been the wrong thing on my point. But she really thought she was okay by pushing the mark away. Of course, she touched the mark, and Elizabeth was disqualified. And I still see her now. She's in Club 420s, and she's doing well.
So Jerry, if I had a whisker pole in my hand and I pushed the mark out of my way with a whisker pole and then put it back down below the boat,
You would still touch the mark. Is that not correct?
I would think so.
Yeah. Whisker pole, boom, rudder. Yeah. Spinnaker. None of it can touch the mark. Okay. This is the brand new Rule 43, exoneration. And it takes exoneration. Exoneration used to live in 3 different places. And this consolidates it all into one spot. And if I can find my notes here, let's see. Oh, yeah. Here we go. New Rule 43, exoneration replaces the old Rule 43, competitive clothing and equipment. It's gone. The new Rule 43 consolidates exoneration rules into one rule. So 43.1a used to be 64.1a. 43.1b used to be Rule 21, which it's not in the new book. And C used to be part of Rule 14. So let's take a look. Instead of reading through these, I think it's easier just to look at a scenario for each of them. And here we go. Let's look at A. When, as a consequence of breaking a rule, a boat has compelled another boat to break a rule, the other boat is exonerated for her breach. So let's see what's going on here at slide 70. Yellow, windward starboard tack, must duck a port tack boat. Okay? So if she must duck this boat, we know right off the bat, red has what? Has broken Rule 10. Okay? So she must avoid contact, and as she's avoiding contact, she comes down on green, and green has to come down below, and green is leeward on the same tack as windward, so she's right away over yellow. So what happens is yellow protests red, and green protests yellow. But yellow broke the rule as a consequence of a boat has come that Yellow compelled her to break that rule because she broke a rule. And therefore, yellow is exonerated. Green's protest is not, she can protest, but it'll be found if it goes to a hearing that yellow is exonerated. Does everybody understand that one? I hope I did a good job of explaining that. All right. B. Now, when a boat is sailing within the room or marked room to which she is entitled, and as a consequence of an incident with the boat required to give her that marked room, she breaks a rule of Section A, Part 2, 15, 16, or 31, she is exonerated. So let's see what's going on here. This is I know we haven't talked about mark room. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. This is a reach mark. And we see that yellow is overlapped with blue. She's the inside boat. So next week, we're going to learn that yellow gets mark room. Okay? Yellow gets mark room. And as she comes around, she jibes from starboard to port. So right here, she's on port tack. Blue's still on starboard tack. And what happens is yellow makes contact. Yellow jibes in a seaman-like way. Her stern contacts blue stern with no damage. Yellow breaks rules 14 and 16-1. 16-1 being changing course. She's changing course. 14 being making contact. Blue breaks rule 18.2b, which is mark room. Blue didn't give yellow sufficient mark room. So yellow was sailing within the room of mark room that she deserved. And so yellow will be exonerated for breaking rules 16.1 and 14, making contact.
Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
If there had been damage to blue boat at that mark,
Yeah, damages.
would that have been, if there had been damages, would that have been a different story to whereas yellow should have bailed out sooner, believing that may have occurred?
Yeah, we're going to cover that on the next slide. And let me just move to that. It says a right-of-way boat or one sailing within the room or mark room to which she is entitled, and that's what yellow is doing there, is exonerated for breaking rule 14 if the contact does not cause damage or injury, Wendell.
Okay.
So you're absolutely right. If it causes damage or injury, there's a problem. You will not be exonerated. So what's going on here? We got a boat on port tack, and we got a right-of-way boat on starboard tack. And she comes down, and boom, her spinnaker contacts red right there. But there's no damage or injury. And so, although green breaks rule 14, because she could have avoided, don't you think? I think so. Port starboard is broken, rule 10 is broken by red, so red will, be found that she broke rule 10. She should take a penalty turn, and green can sail on. All right? Very good. A couple other rules, not a big change here, but they stuck in the notice of race. So 44-1, when taking a penalty, a boat may take it 2 turns, and this is not new, but it used to be a 720 or 360. But by default, you take a 2-turn penalty when you may have broken a rule of Part 2 to take a penalty, to exonerate yourself. She may take a 1-turn penalty when she had broken rule 31. So if you hit a mark, it's a 1 turn. Everything else is a 2-turn. If in the same incident, you really mess up, you hit a mark, you hit a boat, you've broken rules all over the place, you don't have to take 3 turns, you still only have to take 2. Then it goes on to say, and this is new, the notice of race. So this is why it's important to read the notice of races beginning in January. You want to you probably want the notice of race aboard with you, just like you have the sailing instructions. Unless you can remember everything, and I can't. So that's what I'm going to do. But anyways, there's a scoring penalty or some other penalty if it's specified in the notice of race or sailing instructions. All right. And this says that you don't have to take 3 turns basically. And if a boat causes injury or serious damage, despite taking a penalty, you gain a significant advantage, you shall retire. And I don't think that's a common in fleet racing. We really don't see that much of that. Okay, when you take a penalty, there's a certain way to go about it. After getting well clear of boats as soon after the incident as possible, a boat takes a 1-turn penalty or 2 turns penalty by promptly making the required number of turns in the same direction. So each turn include 1 tack and 1 jibe. When a boat takes a penalty at or near the finishing line, her hull shall be completely on the course side. We're going to take a picture of this, but before we do, let's take a look at a windward mark. I'm going to bring one up here. Let's see. Well, this is what I want. Let's say we got a windward mark and we got an offset, okay? And we got 2 boats coming around, and we got a boat coming in on port and a boat coming in on starboard, and, you know, we have contact. Let's just say that yellow broke a rule and she wants to exonerate herself. So they're coming around here, they're coming around the offset, and when yellow gets down here, she takes her penalty turn or turns, depending on what's the SI. How's that? Does everybody agree with that? Is that promptly? I don't agree with that. I think promptly would have been to go to windward and take your penalty there and then continue on. Of course, there's a reluctance to do that because you're losing more time by getting clear, well clear, but it says promptly. It doesn't say after you've rounded the offset. So just trying to warn you, if you do touch the mark, take the penalty promptly, and then come on. If in this scenario, if green had looked back and saw yellow do her turn there, she could have protested him, and in the hearing, yellow would have lost, I suspect. It would have had my vote for losing. You know, sometimes you ask 3 judges the same question and you could get 3 different responses. We try not to do that, but sometimes that happens. Okay, so back to 1 and 2 turns penalty. Let's take a look at this finish line scenario. All right, and here we are. Red comes up and her bow crosses and she finishes. A millisecond later, after she finishes, she touches the mark. Has she broken a rule?
Yes.
Yes. And she must take her penalty turn. And so the best way to take it, she comes down here and she jibes, she tacks, and she finishes. This is probably the most efficient way to do that. And then this will be her finish of record right there. Her finish of record. Not the first time she crossed because she had to take a penalty. But what that is saying is you must, what does it say? Promptly require, when a boat takes a penalty at near the finish line, her hull shall be completely on the course side before she finishes. So she had to come completely back over to the course side to finish again. If she had to come up here and done a couple, you could still jibed and tacked up here, but you'd have had to come down completely on the course side to finish again. There's one thing this scenario doesn't consider. If there were more boats finishing with you, what would happen if there were more boats coming? Would you be able to make this maneuver?
No.
Probably not.
And why would you not? When you're taking a penalty,
You have to get clear.
you have
No
to,
right away.
you have to keep clear of, yeah, you have to keep clear of other boats, right? So other boats are coming to finish, you're in a bad way there. You're in a bad way. So you probably have to, dip this way, do your penalty turns, and finish again. Now, if you imagine that string that I showed you at the beginning, and your string goes around this way and comes around like that, and it's pulled tight, you still pass the mark on the proper side in the proper sequence. Just because you did a little extra dipsy-do won't be held against you. In other words, you don't have to undo that. You can go around, do your penalty turn, and finish like that. All right. Notice there's a blue flag there. You're going to see a lot of that beginning in January, and I'm going to cover that. The scoring penalty, you can display a yellow flag, but remember the notice of race of the sailing instructions must invoke that. And the notice of race is what's new, so that's why this is in here. Again, I emphasize, pay attention to the notice of race and the sailing instructions equally next year. All right, we're getting ready to wrap up. We're done with the moving the boats around for tonight, but we have 3 new race signals. And beside having 3 new signals, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think I am, race signals has been moved from the back of the book to the front of the book. So when you receive your new, or if you look at the PDF I sent you, I don't know if you noticed, but race signals is now at the beginning of the book of rules. They are rules. And I guess that's just to emphasize, how important they are. Also, there's a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but I've been told that U.S. Sailing's version of the rule book will have an index in it this year. And it's always had a table of contents, but there's never been an index at the back of the book where, you could look up a term and it would show you all the places that it appears. And I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Also, there's going to be an app, and U.S. Sailing was supposed to release it by now. I checked today, and it has not been released as of yet. But the app will be very handy, to have aboard if you need to consult a rule. It'll be very quick, and it also have hyperlinks to cases and appeals. So it's supposed to be a very cool app. Time will tell. But right now we're going to wrap up with these 3 new race signals: signal flag V, the orange flag, and the blue flag.
Hey, Phil Leonard, I'm thinking back in 2000, the rule book did have an index. What do you recall?
I don't remember. I never used it. So it doesn't matter, I guess.
Another indication of getting old. Okay.
2000, that's a long time ago. That's 20 years.
Well,
Okay.
they say the second thing you lose is your memory. I don't remember the first. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Phil. Okay. Signal flag B, monitor communication channel for safety instructions. All right. Right off the bat, most of us are dinghy sailors, and many of our classes do not require us having a VHF aboard. So, this will not have a huge impact on us. Some of our classes allow a VHF for receiving only, Flying Scots, for example. And I think the Thistles allow, they may require, I can't remember off the top of my, I think the Thistles require it. The Flying Scots may have it. Force 5s, what I race, and Buccaneers, not allowed. Lasers, not required. Wayfarers I'm not familiar with your sailing class rules, but I suspect it's not required to have a VHF. So this probably won't impact us dinghy sailors a whole lot. This is an old friend. Orange staff displayed on one end of the starting line. Orange flag on the staff. You're familiar with this, but it's always been covered in the sailing instructions. Now it's a rule. Now it's part of race signals. So you will always see this orange flag at one end of the starting line. What's new this year, well, and that is new, but we're used to it because the sailing instructions always covered that. But the blue flag will be at one end of the finishing line. So that is new for this year. So if your club doesn't have any blue flags, get out the sewing machines, cut up some blue jeans or something, and sew up a few flags, because that will be required. Of course, the sailing instructions and the notice of race can change that, but that's not a race management best practice. That's not a race management best practice to change, a rule like that. So look for the blue flag this year.
So for those people who are race operations and they're wondering, why in the world did US Sailing make a flag for finishes and not just leave it at the orange flag like you were doing? So there was a blue flag before that simply indicated that the race committee was on station ready for finishes. It wasn't used a lot. So I think they kind of took that and went a step further. But Jerry, why didn't they just allow a orange flag for finishes?
I don't know.
So we should be able to fly them simultaneously on the same post. So you may be starting races and finishing races, right?
Well, you probably, to avoid confusing the sailors, I wouldn't have them on the same staff. And if you're in a situation where you may be finishing boats and starting boats from the same signal vessel, I would probably have a start line on one side and a finishing line on the other, with the orange flag on one side and the blue flag on the other side.
So I suspect it's that scenario that kind of made them go this way.
Yeah. Remember, the golden rule of race management is do nothing to confuse the competitors. That's what we strive for. We're not always successful, but that's believe it or not, that's what we work very hard to accomplish. So tonight's rules, any questions, comments, scenarios you want to share?
So the one question I have for the experienced racers here, how do you feel about the change to the rule that it's your hull that finishes and not any longer crew or equipment as it relates to downwind finishes and the spinnaker?
I think it makes it easier.
I think it's easily adaptable. I don't see a good or bad to it.
I don't see a problem with it myself, because the only thing that would ever apply for the Flying Scots is the spinnaker, because there's no bow sprits or anything like that, so there's no extra attachments. But
So
most
you're-
of the,
I'm not sure some of these are
Well, Wendell, we kept an eye on that, and if you were finishing and you let your spinnaker out, I wouldn't finish you until you bow crossed in that case, because you were trying to entice me.
Or a spinnaker boat and a non-spinnaker boat finishing at the same time, which in theory, one design class shouldn't take place, but could.
well, it can if the spinnaker's coming up from behind the other boats ahead.
Yeah, with
Spinnakers, yeah.
lake sailing and all the holes we can sail into, you could have a spinnaker boat catching up to a non-spinnaker boat. And your spinnaker no longer gets you there.
I'm trying to envision the spinnaker could, depending on the wind conditions, occlude the actual bow, could it not? So kind of be a little misleading.
What do you mean by
Yeah,
occlude? Hide it so you can't see it?
Yes.
Yeah, so my next question to those race committee people on the call who are used to sighting the finish line with spinnakers in play, do you really think you're going to be able to change your eyes and mind to erase that spinnaker?
Yeah. But Wendell makes a good point. You know, the spinnaker could obscure the bow.
Yep.
And, but if other boats are real close, you'll be able to judge, hopefully, by relative position, who crossed the finishing line first, even if you can't actually see the bow. You know, if you're a foot ahead and you remain a foot ahead.
I can see that scenario on, especially with the spinnaker boat, non-spinnaker boat. If the spinnaker's coming up from behind, between the race committee and the other boat,
Yeah.
you may not be able to judge that correctly.
So what do you guys think about they eliminated it for finishes, but not for overlap? I mean, doesn't that just kind of make it harder to remember?
Eh,
It counts for overlaps.
Correct.
Yeah.
But not for finishes.
I'm never close. I'm never close enough for that to matter anyway.
John, come on, come on.
I suspect this was done for the benefit of race committee, so that race committee doesn't make the judgment of what is the normal position for the equipment.
Yeah. That's probably for those easing out the spinnaker to try to squeak out that wind. That wind, yeah.
Or some classes require a bowsprit to be retracted at certain points. And that this removes all of that knowledge and expectation from race committee, who may not be familiar with all the class rules for all the different classes of boats that may be competing.
I actually have a question about the blue flag, if we can go back to that for a minute.
Sure.
When you're doing a shortened course and we use the mark boat and the mark, does the mark boat have to have the blue flag?
No. The S flag is the signal
Okay,
between the S flag on a staff and a nearby mark.
right, okay.
Good question.
Just curious because the blue one hadn't been required before actually, so.
Yeah. That's a good question. And no, it will not be. So
So Angela, are you going to have a blue flag for the Geechee Cup?
I think we already have one, actually, but I'll make sure we do, Jolene.
what cup is this?
It's a
St. Patrick's Regatta. It's in
okay.
March.
Very nice. Great.
Hey, Jim.
I need to get that on the beat. Do you invite, is it an invitational or is that just a club?
It's invitational. It's already on Regatta Network.
Well, can you send me the details, Angela?
Sure.
And I'll put it on the calendar for the beat.
So
Where
Jerry,
is
it's
it?
in Savannah, so the beat covers Georgia?
Oh, it's in Savannah. No,
Okay.
I don't.
Sorry, Angela.
What's the beat? A local.
Yeah, it's a North Carolina sailboat racing monthly
Newsletter.
newsletter. Yeah, just stuff about racing in North Carolina.
Angela, I'll forward you a copy and you can see if you can get it going down there too.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
So is that, did you say Charleston?
Savannah.
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 Savannah. I've never raced down there.
Yeah, it's in the Wilmington River into Walsall Sound.
Are currents involved?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't
Big
do
time.
currents.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, that
There's more
kind of
current in
wraps.
Savannah than there is in Charleston.
There's more in, now I'm familiar with Charleston. There's more in Savannah? Good, right. That's a lot of current.
Oh, yeah.
So anyone, any questions on what's been covered?
No, I think you guys did a fantastic
So I
job.
know-
Yeah, it was awesome. I really like the illustrations, Jerry.
Well, you're welcome. And I share my slide deck with anybody that wants to give it down in your location. So if anybody out there wants a copy of my slide deck and the notes and the PDF that goes along with it, I am pleased to share it.
Yeah, that'd be great. We actually have our Frostbite series starting this Saturday.
Can you send me an email and I'll just send you a link to the, my email is trimsales, all one word, TRIMSAILS @gmail.com.
Angela, he's on copy on the email you got from me. And
Fabulous.
Jerry one time said tomorrow is session 2, but actually we have a week from tonight,
Oh yeah, I'm used to doing this 2 days in a row, yeah.
session 2, and give you a chance to kind of look over the rules we covered, the definitions, and then see you guys next Tuesday.
And look over the definitions, because if you don't understand the definitions, it's very hard to understand the rules. So understand when is an overlap established? What does an overlap look like? And that PDF has a lot of pictures of overlaps, and I think there's even a few questions to help you test yourself. And yeah, I'll see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Jerry.
Jerry. Keep going.
All right, everybody.
Thank
Right.
you.
Night.
Thank you. Bye.